Okay, here's my sourdough bread. It has proofed for almost 24 hours. The video that I watched says that it could proof for anywhere between 6 and 48 hours. This one is almost 24 hours. So I am preheating the oven to 450 degrees with a brand spanking new Dutch oven. Inside heating up along with the oven. So now what I will do is I will flip this over onto a plate covered with parchment paper. Then the parchment paper will go right in the Dutch oven with the bread, and it will cook for 30 minutes. Okay, so here is my bread. A piece of parchment paper. For some reason, I can never tear look how pretty it looks. All right, now she used some kind of fancy tool to score the top, being that this is my first go around at this. We're going to be less than fancy. That's basically scored the top. Hers looked way better. So she did something like that. And that. And that. Something like that. Okay, so now as soon as the oven is heated, I will plop this into the Dutch oven. It cooks for 30 minutes with the lid on, and then for 10 to 15 minutes with the lid off. While this is baking, I'm going to sew a bread bag to store it in when it's done. So now I'm going to transition to sewing. Not a lot of materials needed for this bread bag. I have a half a yard of linen fabric. The video that I watched said that you could make the drawstring out of the same fabric, but instead I bought this string that I'm going to use. It's more than string, it's a little bit thicker. To make the drawstring, I need my measuring tape and I need my pins. That's about it. I'm using white thread on this. So again, half a yard of fabric on this. This is cut to 36 inches. I'm going to shorten it to about 30, 32, depending on how big I decide to make this bag. Okay, so here's my linen fabric. It's half a yard is what is required, and spread it out long ways. And I'm going to measure 30 inches. And just cut down the stripe. That is 30 inches. One of these days I will invest in a cutting mat and rotary cutter. But for now, using striped fabric seems to help. Then take that and fold it in half, inside out, but this fabric looks the same both directions, so that doesn't really matter. Probably have enough here to make another bag. This is actually my second attempt. I did a practice one yesterday, and it's a good thing I did because I ended up having to rip out 4 seams and starting over. So I'm glad I did a practice one. And I also learned a little bit about working with linen fabric, which I'll explain in a little bit. Right, now that it's folded in half, I'm going to put a couple of pins just to keep it straight as I do the next set of cuts. Now, the bag that I made yesterday was 13 inches. Because I am making this one for, and that bag was a traditional loaf of bread. Today, because this is sourdough and it's a rounded loaf, and I've never made the sourdough before, so I don't really know how big it's going to end up when it's done, I'm going to elect to make this one 15 inches. So because both of my edges look the same, right? There's not a rough side versus a non-rough side. I only need to cut one edge here at 15. So I'm just making this 2 inches wider than the one that I would have made for a traditional loaf of bread that I made in loaf pans yesterday. That was white Amish bread. Pretty easy recipe. It makes 2 loaves, and we actually already went through 1 loaf of that, and then I'm going to use the rest for sandwiches for Chris this week. So, okay, now I need to measure down. Oops, there's my timer, or my oven telling me my oven's preheated. So I'm going to go put the bread in the oven. So come along with me. All right, so I preheated the oven with the new cast iron Dutch oven inside. So I'm going to leave it there. I am going to set the bread into the Dutch oven on top of the parchment, and then put the lid on top. So now the bread is in the oven, and we'll set the timer for 30 minutes. All right, now I'm going to take my tape measure and measure down 2 inches. I'm actually going to go 2.5 because I did 2 inches yesterday and feel like I could have a little bit more space for my tie. So I'm measuring down 2.5 and putting pins straight across. And what these pins are going to be are my guide for telling me where to start and stop my edge sewing, because what eventually is going to happen is this is going to end up wrapping down, and so we're going to start sewing right in here. So I transition to this. All right, what I learned about sewing this linen fabric yesterday was it had the tendency to want to gather. So because I had to rip out 2 seams, the second time I did it, it was much better. My mistake yesterday is I started sewing at the top instead of sewing where the pin started. So we're going to actually end up putting 2 different seams in here, one at a 1/2 inch and the second at 3/8 of an inch, just to kind of give it that added durability. And then what you're going to notice me doing is not only am I going to be guiding the fabric, but I'm actually going to be pulling it taut, and that's going to prevent it from gathering as it did yesterday. So as always, I'm going to do a couple stitches forward, a couple stitches backwards, and then down 1/2 inch. And I'm missing my glasses and I can't see. That doesn't sound right. Remember when I said the only tools you would need were scissors, fabric, pins, and a tape measure? Well, you also need a seam ripper, because what happened is my bobbin got buggered up and I don't really know what was happening. What I had done was I had purchased a set of, I was like 5 or 6 already threaded white bobbins. And that's what I was using. Now, somewhere along my self-teaching of sewing, I read that you should not use those, or I read, or I heard, or watched, or somebody said, don't use those pre-threaded bobbins. And I thought, surely for this handy dandy little project with white thread, why not? So I'm gonna say that that is what the problem was. So what I did was I took that bobbin out and used the thread that I am using to thread a bobbin with the same thread that I'm using in the machine. So we shall see if that makes any difference. Could also very well be user error. All right, bobbin is threaded. There's that culprit. Let's try this again. So again, starting at 2 inches, or I'm sorry, 1/2 inch at my 2.5 inch mark. I'll try this again. The other interesting thing about working with linen is it in itself is very stringy. All right. All right, much better. Got some random long string here, though. What the heck? So any of you that are master seamstresses that would like to offer advice, please feel free, because I'm just making things up as I go. My sewing machine is just one of the many tools I've been learning to use lately. Learned how to use a circular saw yesterday and a nail gun. So just broadening my horizons. All right, so now I'm going to go the same place, only this time, again, starting that 2 or 2.5 mark. This time going at 3/8 just to double seam this. Well, there's my problem. I got 3 strings coming out of my bobbin. What the heck? Definitely some user error going on here. All right, not perfectly straight, but the only one that really matters is the one on the inside, because that's what's going to be the side of the bag. So trim my ungodly excess string here. That's already way better than yesterday, though. What was happening yesterday is when I would finish this side, it would be all puckered at the ends. So, again, I'm going to assume that that's a linen thing. Again, could be user error. Hard to say. All right, going to do the exact same thing on the other side. So my pin is showing me where to start. And I'm going to do a 1/2 inch on this side. Ah, much better. Much better. Still have this really long. I can only assume it's the bobbin thread. And then these threads on the side are just from the linen unraveling. I was originally thinking that I would do those French seams that I had done on the pillowcase on this, but it's only a bread bag. So maybe if I make another one, I'll try the French seams just to keep all this stuff. All right, and now 3/8. All right, that's the best one yet. All right, now the video, the girl that I watched to learn how to do this, did some trimming up of her edges. She used pinking shears. Again, I'm kind of a newbie here, don't have pinking shears, so I'm just going to trim off maybe 1/8 of an inch here, just so that when I do end up flipping it inside out, which I'm going to do here momentarily, it's not super bulky on the inside. Hers looked super cute because it was the pinking shears and it gave that zigzag edge. Again, it's on the inside, so doesn't matter. And if I had them, I would use them, but I don't. Have to spread out my money between outside projects, sewing projects, cooking projects. Today I got the stuff to build my chicken brooder. I have 6 chickens on order, and so we should be getting chickens in the next week or so. Okay, so now when we turn this right side out, maybe this does have it is a little bit darker on this side, so it might have a right side. Again, she used, I think, crochet needle to really make her corners come out nice, but I'm not that fancy. All right, next step involves the iron. So we're going to do a couple of different steps with the iron. So I'm going to go get that set up. All right, now that the bag is pressed, I'm going to work on creating that channel. So first, I want to make sure these 2 little sides are good. And again, the video I watched, she had a handy dandy little tool that I don't have. So because my fabric is striped, however, that makes it a little bit easier. So she folded it over 1/2 inch. I'm just going to fold over to the blue line and then make a crease and press that over. And then the next crease is going to be what's going to create the channel for our tie. So I didn't do any measuring or anything yesterday. I just took it the whole way down to where it meets up with my sewing edge. I did go down a little bit further today. So this one looks like it's going to be a little bit easier to thread my string through. The stripes on here certainly help to make sure that I am making a nice straight seam. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a couple of pins and I'm just going to secure I'm going to end up sewing right along this bottom seam because my string is going to go in here. So I am just going to put my pins across, leaving enough space for me to put that seam in the bottom where my tie goes. And now that I'm looking at, there's my bread. I'm going to pause this and check out my bread. All right, my timer went off for the first 30 minutes. I'm not gonna lie, I'm a little bit nervous. But what we're supposed to do now is take the lid off. Okay, here's the first glimpse. Ooh! Oh, I'm so excited. That looks amazing. Yay! All right, now it goes back in for 10 to 15 minutes. Not gonna lie, my bread looks amazing. All right, so I'm gonna flip this over, do the same thing on this side. Doesn't really matter if this first fold is the same as the second one. What's gonna matter is this one. And because that's a little bit off, I'm gonna go back and make this one a little bit shorter. Since my bread looks so pretty, I need my bread bag to look pretty too. Perfect. Same thing. Striped fabric is amazing. Although I'm sure pattern fabric, you can cover up a lot of mistakes with pattern fabric. And then I'm going to do the same thing. Pin it up above where I'm going to end up sewing just to hold that fold in place. All right. Go here. We're going to turn it inside out again. That bread actually looks pretty big. I hope that it'll fit in here. So excited though, it looks so good. Okay, so here we have to be a little bit careful, right? Because we have to make sure that we're not pulling the other little seam in here. And this one you want to do as close to the bottom of that ironed seam as possible. Now I made this one a little bit thicker, so I have some clearance for that heavy duty twine that I'm going to use as my tie. So I should be okay. And again, the nice straight lines on the fabric make it a little easier. Oh, it's way better than my one yesterday. Same thing on this side. I'm going to do it about halfway down this white line. Yep, I did that. But at least I caught that mistake early. Start that one over. Moved the needle the wrong direction. Learn something new every time. So always turn it to my right. Yes, much better than yesterday's. All right, now we're going to turn it right side out. There's my little channel. Now, the video that I watched to learn how to do this, she made her own little drawstrings out of extra fabric, and it's super cute. But being that this is basically my second project, I was looking for something a little bit easier. But basically, you just use a 30-inch piece of your extra fabric, and you fold it a couple of times, and it does make a cute little tie that matches your bag. But I was looking for something a little bit more simple. So I got this string. So the last step here is to feed it through. Oh yes, my channel's much better than the one yesterday. So this string actually has a piece of plastic at the end, which makes it easy to grab through if you're using a piece of fabric, or if your twine doesn't have something to feed it through, you could always put a safety pin on the end, and that will help to feed it through. And frankly, now that this is so much bigger, it might have been easier for mine today too. And then what I did is, because this was a 36, no, it wasn't. It was a 72-inch. Oh, there's telling me 1 more minute left in my bread. This was a 72 inches piece of twine, or whatever you want to call this. So I cut it in half. Yesterday I cut mine down to about 32, and it's actually maybe 30. Maybe I didn't cut it that much. Maybe it's like 34. And it is kind of long, but I kind of like that, because what it allowed me to do was to wrap, and I'll show you here when we're done, but it allowed me to wrap it around the opening to really make sure that it's airtight. And since this one I made 2 inches wider in order to accommodate a loaf of round sourdough, I think I'll leave this one at the 36 inches that it is. But I do put a knot in both ends to keep it from pulling through this channel. Oh, there it is. All right, Brad, I'm coming. So excited to see the finished product. Let me get this end through. All right. Here we go. Moment of truth. Timer's going off. Before I take it out, I'm going to check it, because it said 10 to 15 minutes. Oh my God, it looks amazing. I'm going to pull it out just a little bit. Might want it 5 more minutes. Yeah, I'm going to leave. I'm going to say 3 more minutes. And one thing that I forgot to mention before was, at that halfway point, I did lower the oven to 400. So we started at 450 degrees for the first 30 minutes. Once I took the lid off, the last, what will end up being 13 minutes, are at 400 degrees. All right, here we go. Oh, yeah. Aren't the best oven mitts. Mm. All right. Plan B. I am pretty darn excited about this. So here it is, my first batch of sourdough bread. Let it cool for a little bit. We'll cut it, taste it, see if this is another new hobby. All right, so I threaded this twine or whatever this is through to make my tie. Make sure they're even on both sides. And then I'll put a little knot. Well, it might be a little long. I may end up cutting these eventually, but for now it's good. Put a little knot in the end. Because this wants to unravel. I'll probably melt it too, but it's fine. All right, now I'll take it over and see. Oops, oh way, this way. So here's the finished product. Super cute. So it's more square than rectangle because I want it for the sourdough bread. Now we'll take it over and see if it's gonna fit. So this is the one that I made yesterday. Can see what I mean about I just wrapped it around to provide a little bit more air tightness. I think doing the tie that she did would allow you to gather the ends a little bit tighter together and make it more airtight than I was able to with this thick string. So if I was going to do this again, I would probably use something a little bit thinner than this white twine, but because I left that excess, it allowed me to wrap it around. So this is the bread that I made yesterday. This is that white, it was just white Amish bread. Makes two loaves. It's really pretty tasty. It does have, I don't know, maybe 2/3 of a cup of sugar, so not super healthy. But it fits nicely inside this original bag that I made. And now looking at this and my sourdough, I think that's going to fit very well inside as well. So once that cools off and I cut it and have a slice, we'll put it in its new little bread bag. Super excited about both my bread and my project. Bye-bye. The dogs are none too happy with me because Teddy hates the sewing machine. So as I have been finishing up with the bread and my sewing project, they've been relegated to hang out in the yard out there because otherwise Teddy would be losing her mind. They actually seem quite content at the moment. They were all four lined up sitting at the fence a couple of minutes ago saying, "Come on, Mom, let me in, let me in." Just Rip now is waiting. So as soon as I clean up, then they can come in and have some attention. I cannot wait anymore. I'm going to cut in to my sourdough bread and really pray that I don't have a Christmas vacation moment where it goes spoof. Should really have a cutting board. Oh, look at that. That looks amazing. Oh, I'm so excited. Not even a little bit hungry, but I'm totally trying a piece. I think I need a sharper knife. Squishing it down. I'm squishing my pretty bread. I don't know why the bottom's not overdone. I don't think. Oh, I'm really mangling this piece. I'm just breaking that. Got that fluff back up. Some butter. All right, I'm gonna give it a taste. The crust is amazing. Crispy, crunchy. I give myself 2 thumbs up. Good stuff.